Hi, everyone.
Hello.
I'm Lauren.
I am Ken.
And this is Paradise After Dark.
Dark.
Paradise After Dark is an independent podcast covering true crime,
Unsolved mysteries,
missing people,
and every now and then an urban legend.
If you'd like to support our show and get a bunch of extra Paradise After Dark content, please sign up for our Patreon at patreon.com/Palmahawk Media. That's PALMAHAWK Media.
And please sure to check out our website at paradiseafterdark.com.
On the website, you'll find links to all of our episodes, even the archived episodes, our mailing list, merch store, links to our social media, and of course, our Patreon.
Yeah, we have a ton of content on our Patreon now, so feel free to log in there and sign up. We got a ton of stuff for you if you're interested.
Hey, Ken.
What?
Do you know what this week is?
It is the last week of March.
First week of April as well. Kind of both. But what's special about this week?
That's right. I forgot about this April thing coming up. Man, time is going fast. What's so special about right now?
It's our anniversary week.
What? Anniversary week?
Yeah.
How long have we been married?
Our podiversary.
So is it okay? It's anniversary for the podiversary.
Podiversary.
I get it now. Okay. My
4 years.
4 years.
We've been at this for 4 years.
4 years, and this is as far as we've gotten.
I think we've gotten pretty far.
I know. Remember we started?
I'm pretty proud of us. Yeah, I remember when we started, we had like gaming headphones with little microphones.
Well, that was partially my fault because Lauren's like, I think we can do this podcast. I'm like, no, we can't. She's like, yes, no. So finally she's like, all right, well, I'm going to order us these headphones with the microphones and we'll try it. And I'm like, no, don't order those. They're too expensive. So she bought these little gaming headphone things, and it was okay. Remember, we had to sit like shoulder to shoulder because we had to plug them into your desktop?
Yes. Oh, my gosh. We have come a long way.
Yeah, and then we had we experimented with a different microphone, but it was picking up sounds from all over the house. We moved locations numerous times. And
Let's just say our audio for the first year wasn't the greatest.
No, but our content was magnificent because it was.
I agree. I think we had great
stuff so
content.
close to home that we were. I think it was when you're so close to home, you get involved so much because at the time that these things occurred, theoretically we were involved. So it's not when we first started, we were taking cases that we knew. Things that, you read about, we heard about, we saw it on the news at night. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of where we started. And that's what, sort of piqued our interest in what we did as far as Paradise After Dark and, the Tri-County area and then expanding out to where now
we are global, baby.
All over the place. So, yeah, definitely different. And that goofy little milk crate.
Yes, we still have that somewhere.
It is. It's over there. We still have the same microphone we use, too. So that is actually interesting because our case tonight that we're going to present, if you remember, it was done with that particular microphone in the milk crate.
Was it?
Yeah, it was a foam. I built this like sound foam box and had that microphone in the milk crate because we had to kind of cloud out the dogs walking on the floor and different noises because we weren't really. I was practicing with the sound at the time. Yeah, I'm almost positive that's what it was.
Okay.
It was the best audio we could come up with at the time.
Right. So, as Ken just mentioned, in honor of our 4-year podiversary, we're going to do a little throwback, and we are going to re-release an episode, one of our very, very early episodes. This one actually came out in November of 2018, and I chose this one. I chose it because this case has stuck with me ever since. Ever since we covered this case, it's stuck with me. It's the still unsolved case of Kyle Byrtus, who was murdered in Lehigh Acres, Florida in August of 2013. And I've actually been in contact with Kyle's mother over all these years. And
we've met with her personally on different occasions.
Yes, we've met her face to face, and that's the case we are presenting you tonight. So give it a listen. Stay tuned for the end. And we'll be back at you next week with a new episode.
Hello.
Welcome back to Paradise After Dark.
Dark.
I'm Lauren,
I'm Ken.
and tonight we're going to talk about an unsolved murder out of Lee County, Florida.
This is a story of Kyle Byrtus. He was a good kid who just happened to make some bad choices that ultimately led to his death. And there's so many times we see on TV and read in the news or just hear of someone who's gone missing, just vanished without a trace. You know, we've done episodes on these cases such as Felipe Santos, Terrence Williams, Ajay Desir, and Wendy Hudacock. In these cases, the family gets to a point where they don't even care what happened to their loved one. They just want to know where they are. But what about if the person was found, but their loved ones were left with no clues as to how, why, or when, or even where?
Kyle Alexander Byrtus was born on May 17, 1988. Kyle was found on August 15, 2013 in a field near Meadow Road and Lehigh Court in Lehigh Acres, Florida. He was murdered. Now, we had the privilege of speaking with Kyle's mother, Lynn, for this episode. We'll be giving you the facts, or lack thereof, in this case, but we're gonna pretty much let Lynn tell you Kyle's story in her words. Please listen to these clips of our interview with Lynn, and remember that this is not entertainment. This is a mother who's grieving, a mother who's lost her only son. Admittedly, this was a tough story for us to cover. There's very little information about Kyle's death, and the case has gone all but completely cold. New cases have come up, and this one, it seems, is just not a top priority for law enforcement these days. But we have a mother and a family who refuse to give up. They're still searching for answers, and they won't stop until there's justice for Kyle. Kyle wasn't perfect, but he was human. He was murdered, and someone out there knows something.
Kyle was born in Hollywood, Florida. As an infant, his mom had moved back to Fort Myers to be closer to family. He was the only son of Lynn Krieger, the oldest grandchild and the only grandson to Lynn's parents. He was very close with his grandfather growing up, and as a teen, even went on mining expeditions together. Kyle also went on several mission trips to Central America with his church youth group. They would perform clown acts and puppet acts for orphanages throughout Guatemala and Honduras. He looked really forward to these trips every year, as any child would if it was something you enjoyed doing.
Yeah.
He played soccer on into middle school, but in high school is where he found his passion for cross-country running. He played soccer in middle school, but in high school is where he found his passion for running cross-country. His senior year, he was co-captain of the cross-country team and received several scholarships to FAU, Florida Atlantic University, in Boca Raton, Florida. He was a straight-A kid and graduated Fort Myers High School with honors in 2006.
This kid had a smile on his face all the time. I could just, he was just always very, very happy.
And you mentioned he did mission trips when he was younger?
Oh, yeah.
How old was he when he did that?
I think it started, I'm thinking he was in 6th or 7th grade. I let him go only because my sister and her husband were in charge.
And where did
he go? And so, he went to Guatemala and Honduras.
Wow.
I think he went to Honduras a couple times, went to Guatemala, and I really can't tell you if it was 3 or 4 trips that he was on.
I'm sorry, roughly what age was that?
6th or 7th grade.
Wow, that's got to be overwhelming for a child that young.
But exciting.
Yeah, all in one.
Yeah, and he may have been 7th or 8th grade. I think one of his first trips was right after 9/11.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, it was about 7th or 8th grade. Because I remember them coming back and on the plane, and it's kind of funny, but they always brought back, you bring back souvenirs.
Uh-huh.
All the guys had machetes, and they were in their backpacks. And I'm thinking, you got through customs with these things?
Wow.
And I remember it was like the summer after 9/11, so.
Wow. Yeah, that's kind of crazy. But, that's really amazing that he was able to do that, go to those countries. And I'm sorry for my ignorance, but what exactly do they do on these mission trips?
They are church-based.
Right.
And so they go, particular trip, one was they went and visited orphanages, and they would do plays, they did clowns, they would, they had somebody that blew up balloons just to be with the kids and teach them about Jesus, because a lot of them, they've never heard of him before or anything like that, and just spread the word.
Okay.
And another trip, they went down and helped build a school.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow.
What that had to be exciting to be part of. And he obviously came back and shared this with you? I mean,
Oh, yes. We had pictures and everything. Actually, one of the pictures there's a picture of him holding an iguana on the Crime Stoppers webpage. It's one picture. He was in Guatemala. That's one of the pictures from down there. They have iguanas running everywhere.
Wow.
He was outgoing to a point. It took him a while to warm up to you, but he had some shy qualities. But once I'm his mother. I didn't see him in school every day, and some of the stories that I hear just, make me smile to know that he was always, helpful to people. And I know there was one friend that said that he was always behind him, pushing him, while they were running. He never really got in. I know of one occasion he got in trouble. He in ninth grade, and it was taken care of. It's under the rug, whatever. Growing up, I think when you leave elementary school, going into middle school, that first year, he always tried to see I think he was testing the teachers to see how far he would push. He could push them. And then afterwards, he was just fine. But he could sit in a room and not crack a book open. And I don't know if I ever saw him doing homework at home. And he got straight A's.
So it just came natural. Some people have that.
And then he ran cross country.
Yes. He made all conference, and then he traveled all over the state. Sometimes the team, they had these invitationals, and he ran at Lakewood Ranch, he ran at Disney World. I think they went to Tallahassee one year for a state competition.
Wow,
the whole team, I don't think they came in first. But he has trophies.
Yeah.
All over. He would do the turkey trot. He did the Veterans Memorial Race across, the Midpoint Bridge here in Cape Coral every year. And I just kind of snicker, wondering, where he got this from, because it definitely wasn't inherited.
Yeah.
That's what I tell my family. It always skips generations.
It must have, because, yep, he really, really liked it. And then one time his coach actually took him and several other teammates over to Florida Atlantic University in Boca Raton they did a visit over there. And that's when he came home and said, that's it. Because he always wanted to go to FSU. But when he fell in love with Boca Raton. He goes, Mom, I fit in so well. I'm like, really? Okay.
So, did he get a academic scholarship or a cross-country scholarship?
He actually got both.
Wow.
He got the Bright Futures scholarship through the state because he had a certain GPA, so you get so much. He actually got a scholarship from the Fort Myers Track Club. They give out a certain amount of money to students each year. And then he got so much from Florida Atlantic for, I think it was just for the first semester or whatever, for cross country.
Kyle left for Boca Raton in August of 2006 to start college. His mother, Lynn, recalls phone conversations she had with Kyle while he was away at school. He mentioned that some kids in his dorm had overdosed on drugs. Another time, she remembers him stating he was stressed and nothing can prepare you for your first year of college. She wonders if maybe that was the beginning of Kyle's downward spiral.
It's so mind-boggling that Kyle had turned to drugs and whatnot. Because, I mean, he had a friend early in school that he told me about after high school that had, become a drug addict. And he was in rehab, and Kyle said, I just can't understand it. I'll never be a druggie. And he actually brought that up later on when he was home after trying to get clean. He brought up that conversation to me. He goes, Mom, I never expected this to happen to me.
It was opioid abuse, right? Pain pills?
Yes.
So I did some research, and I know that the majority of people who become addicted to opioids start out because they had an injury and were legally prescribed them. Did he get hurt or have a surgery or something that maybe introduced him? No?
Nope.
So
and I've actually not had the nerve to ask any of his friends to say, how did he start this? I have a couple ideas, just maybe it was for recreation or whatever, or for stress, because I remember him always talking about school and everything and how, no one prepares you for this, and he was always stressed out about this, stressed out about that. And so if he could, probably if he could take a pill to calm down, that's what he did.
From everything I've researched and then reading the letters that you've sent me, like you said, it's very mind-boggling because it just seems like Kyle was such a great guy and an athlete and did well in school, and it's like he just made a few bad choices, and that's what makes, to me, in my mind, that's just what makes this case so tragic.
How do you get to this point?
Yeah.
Exactly. And as a mother, no matter what anybody tells you that you shouldn't do this or you shouldn't do that, you always think, what did I do wrong?
Right, I know.
I don't beat myself up over it all day long, but there are times that I just, where were some signs? How did this happen? Should I have done this? Should I have not done this? You wonder, were you too strict with him? Because we were pretty strict. I mean, he had curfews. He got away with a lot of things, but it's just, you just don't know why any of this happened. Sometimes I wonder, was he clinically depressed? Should I have, but there were no signs of that I could see.
It wasn't long after that Kyle was put on probation at FAU, and eventually he would drop out. And then he decided to return home to his family in Fort Myers. But being at home again with rules and a curfew after being away on his own, I guess didn't quite work out well for him. So although he was working, according to his mother, Kyle refused to follow rules or make a curfew. As an adult, that's kind of tough, I suppose. He was coming home at all hours of the night and kind of doing what he wanted. And Lynn worried about her son, but at times she never imagined it was drugs. She just assumed he was just out drinking with his friends or just out having a good time. He did have a car, which was a gift he received from his parents for graduation after he came home from Boca. His parents gave him the option of transferring it in his own name or assuming responsibility for it, but he didn't want to do that. They eventually took the car away, and Kyle decided to return to Boca Raton, where he stayed for another 5 years. And then he rented places with a few of his former classmates from FAU, but they moved each year when the lease was up.
While in Boca, he worked at several different restaurants to support himself. He came home for the holidays, but he would only stay for a day or so. If he stayed longer, his mother noticed that he always got sick. Looking back, she realizes that he was probably going through withdrawal. In early 2012, a friend contacted the family saying Kyle was heavily into Oxy and needed help.
In 2012 is when his friend Spencer had his mom. Spencer knew where my sister lived in Fort Myers because he would always drop Kyle off because they lived in the same neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
And so he had his mom go over to my sister's house and tell them that, Kyle was in trouble and he needed help. So we all got together, and that's when my brother-in-law and my dad went over to Boca at his apartment, and he was just walking down the sidewalk and he saw him. And they sat and talked to him for a while, and he said, "Yes, I'll come home."
Now, was Spencer over there in Boca Raton with Kyle?
He had gone to FAU also. He graduated and had a good job and everything. Yes.
Okay.
So they were friends in high school, and then they were over in Boca. But how did he know what was going on with Kyle to tell his mother to bring it to your attention?
He had seen Kyle decline, and apparently Kyle did tell him. I'm not 100% sure about that, but he knew what was going on, and it was just getting worse. Apparently 1 or 2 pills is okay, but when you're up to 10 and 12 a day,
yeah,
something's yeah.
Kyle's uncle and grandfather drove over to Boca and found him at his apartment. He agreed to come home and get sober. Family had several places lined up for rehab. He moved in with his grandparents because they were retired and home most of the time. So he didn't go to rehab, even though they had lined up rehab. When Kyle moved back to get clean, he talked with his drug use and how he could afford the pills with his mother. He said that he was the middleman. He would get some from a supplier and then sell a few here and there and just take payment in the form of pills. He said he was up to 10 to 12 pills a day. Taking pills orally was not working anymore, so he started shooting up.
And after being back with his grandparents, Kyle was able to stay sober for a short time, but then he became a bit more independent and fell back into using. And at this point, his mother and grandparents refused to let him live with them until he got clean. And the family had lined up rehab facilities for him, but then he just refused to go.
For the following few months, he lived couch to couch, and at one point he was living in a tent off Summerlin Road near Pine Manor, a neighborhood in Fort Myers, Florida. So, did he get sober for a little while he was home?
For a little while, yes, he did. And he actually started running again. It took him a very long time to get to that point because the drug did do so much damage to his muscles, and he was having, leg pains and everything. He actually was working for a landscape company. He got a job. He was working for a landscape company, and I don't know if he got bit by a spider or if he had gotten, poked with a, palm frond or something, but like right on the top of his hand. At first I thought, oh my gosh, he's shooting up again, because it was right there at the top of the vein. They'd called me, and my dad had taken him to, his hand swelled up ginormously. They took him to the emergency room, and I went there, and my dad asked him, "Can we do a tox screen while you're here?" He goes, "Yeah, go ahead." It came back clean. So yeah, he was clean for a while. He did have a friend that passed away. I think it was in January. He found out a friend of his had passed away over in Boca. It was in a car accident. He took it very bad. And he apparently found something somewhere and took something. And my parents found him on the bathroom floor. And so, he came to and everything, and he was fine. But we just said, we're just going to talk to you tomorrow. You're out of it right now. Go to bed. He actually was looking into signing up with the Army. He actually had an appointment the next day, and he couldn't go because they were going to do a drug test, and he had taken that.
You don't know what it was he took?
Not really. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think he did say it was Oxy.
So, was that the beginning of...
The downfall.
Yeah.
After him coming home, yes. Because that was like, I think that was in January. And by March, he had been working full time. And, my parents were asking, could you give us I told him he had to help pay for, whatever. You're staying there. You're an adult. You can pay some rent. And it wasn't astronomical, or always had some excuse why he couldn't pay him.
Right, so
He
where
had
was
new
this money
shoes.
going?
He had new shoes. He had new clothes. This kid had more clothes than you could imagine. And at the end, I was like, where are they? This is what it's come to. He sold his clothes for drugs. Where did they go? And so when he was asked to leave my parents, he did find a place to stay. A friend of his said he could go stay at, his father was looking for a roommate, or had a room for rent. So he went and stayed there. That didn't last very long. And then that's when I told him, I said, you know what? I said, if you can't pay people to stay at their places, you're going to be out in the streets. And if that happens, you can, we'll get you help and you can come home. I don't need help. I'm like, okay. I'm not doing anything, he says. I'm like, whatever. I said, if the worst gets to worst, Kyle, you can just go to the Salvation Army. They have beds. He basically said, I'm better than that. That's beneath me. I will never do that. And then a few weeks later, I find out he's living in a tent in the field somewhere.
At this point, Kyle was known to frequent an area in South Fort Myers called Pine Manor.
Bit of a shady area.
Pine Manor is a neighborhood known for drugs and criminal activity. It's roughly a half square mile and has a population of approximately 4,000 people. According to AreaVibes.com and HomeFacts.com, the overall crime rate of the Pine Manor neighborhood is 43% higher than the national average.
Ooh.
For every 100,000 people, there are 11 crimes daily. In Pine Manor, you have a 1 in 25 chance of becoming a victim of a crime, and the number of total year-over-year crimes in Pine Manor has increased by 19%.
Whenever there's a drug bust in Pine Manor, I will email them. Are you going to be questioning these people? I want to be sure that this is done. And sometimes I get a response, sometimes I don't.
And Lynn, that was going to be one of the questions I had actually written down here, because you mentioned that in a prior email, that when they do a drug bust, you call or you email and you make sure that, or you ask them to...
I want them...
Why is that?
Yeah, I want them to know that because I feel somebody in Pine Manor still knows.
Yeah.
They knew Kyle. They may know something.
And I think this is where you may be able to fill in the blanks for us, as far as, in the news reports that we found, it all said he had connections to Pine Manor. Did you know who was he hanging out with? What was he doing in Pine Manor?
That is what really blows our mind. We don't know. We don't know if it's just, he was, like I said, this one point in time, he had this little tent. It was like a little pup tent. It was a kid's tent. It was red, yellow, green, and blue. And it was off of Summerlin, back by these power poles in a field between Pine Manor and there's another apartment complex on Summerlin. And he said that's where he was staying right now. So I could drive down the road. I could see that from Summerlin. And every time I would drive by, I'd just say a quick prayer, whatever. And he was never seen there. But I don't know if he just basically drifted into Pine Manor, and because that's where you can get drugs. And so the detective actually told me that, learned more about the heroin trade working Kyle's case than he ever imagined.
Then in June of 2013, he was arrested for petty theft. He was finding receipts in the Walmart parking lot, going inside to find the items, and then he'd return it for cash. And about 4 days after his arrest, he called his mother and asked her to come bail him out. But she agreed to do so only if he went to get help.
But he didn't want to go get help, so she didn't bail him out.
I think the last time I saw him was when he was staying at the house. He was renting that room. And I did feel sorry for him. I didn't want him to starve. I went and bought him a loaf of bread, a jar of peanut butter, paper towels, and toilet paper. Because he had used up all this guy's, and the guy was mad because he'd used up all his paper towels. And I said, just give this to him. And he was hungry. So I said, get peanut butter and bread. I think I may have bought some lunch meat. I gave him a hug. He started crying. That's when I told him, we'll help you out. You need to, let's do this. And then he said no. He was going to get another job. So he got another job, and he was doing very well at this other restaurant. And one day, I guess he was just so high that that was in May of 2013, because it was right after his birthday. In June, he was fired at the end of May, because I did talk to the owner of the restaurant after he died, because she did call me, and she said he was one of the best waiters she ever had. But she goes, I just couldn't take it anymore. He was just standing, she goes, the last day I saw him there, he was standing at the register, and he was just swaying back and forth. He was like, his eyes were closed and everything. He was just out of it. He would shower, he actually was sneaking into a gym, into the shower rooms, and taking showers before he had to go to work. Because he was sleeping in that tent and riding a bicycle
I was just going
to
to
the
say,
restaurant.
Was he homeless at that time?
Yeah.
When was he arrested at Walmart?
He was fired in May of 2013. In June, I think it was June 19th of 2013, he was arrested. And I did not know that until it was about 3 or 4 days later. He finally called and wanted me to bail him out. And, it was only $100 to contact the bail bondsman and whatever. And I was like, if I do this, you need help. I don't need help. I can do this on my own. I'll pee in a cup every day. Just get me out of here. Well, I started thinking he'd been in there already for 3 or 4 days. He was going through withdrawal. Right. He needed out of there, and he was going to tell me anything. And I said, if you cannot tell me you'll go get help, I cannot get you out of there. Well, I actually looked into what the visitation was and who the judge was on that case, because I wanted to talk to the judge, send them a letter or whatever, and tell them, this is his first time for theft, and he has a drug problem. Can we do instead of sentencing him or fining him or anything, can you send him to Teen Challenge? Because they do that. They can court mandate him to go to Teen Challenge or wherever. I had plans on going to visit him, and then I was going to talk to the judge. And when I called in for visitations, they had just let him out.
Was he bailed out, or?
No.
They just let him go?
They just let him go. First offense, let him go.
So what happened after he was released? That was in June, right?
That was in June, and that was the last time I ever talked to him on the phone. Or talked to him, period. My brother-in-law would drive, they live in South Fort Myers, so it was very close to Pine Manor. He would drive through there occasionally. And he did see him one day riding a bicycle. So he stopped him and, You're just talking to him, hey man, how you doing, whatever. And you need to call your mom. He goes, I can't, but just tell her I love her. And he said he seemed very cautious. Because apparently in that neighborhood, if you're seen talking to somebody that's not from that neighborhood, you could probably get yourself in trouble. Because somebody actually came out of a house and, Kyle, you okay? I said, yeah, I'm fine. It's just my uncle. Oh, okay. So,
yeah,
and I think that was,
maybe the thought would be that if you're talking to somebody that wasn't from the area, that they maybe were a deputy or something, or.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
That's speculation on my part, but I'm sure that
Well, it's probably pretty accurate.
Can you tell us about the day that Kyle was found?
We had actually left town. We were going to visit my husband's son and family in Mississippi. And we drove up there. We were having dinner, and Gary gets a phone call on his cell phone. And we were eating dinner, so he just, dismisses it. And it rings again. He dismisses it. He doesn't know the number. Finally gets a text message, and it says, this is about Kyle Byrtus. Please call. And so he just hands me the phone. He didn't really read the message. He said it's Kyle or something. And so he just handed it to me. So I just called back. He told me it was, Detective so-and-so. And I walked outside of the restaurant. They asked me where we were. And I told him we were in Mississippi. He said, what town? So I told him. He goes, where are you at right now? I said, I'm at a restaurant. I don't even know the name of it. He goes, can you be at your hotel in an hour? I said, yeah. I said, can you tell me, is my son okay? I'm sorry, I can't say anything right now at this point in time. And of course, I was a basket case by that time. I walked back into the restaurant and said, we've got to go. Something's wrong with Kyle. We've got to go. And so we went back to the hotel and waited for 2 freaking hours for the local cop to come. And by that time, I'd been on the phone with the detective, I don't know how many times, saying, there is nobody here. Can you please tell me what's going on? He goes, I'll call you back in a few minutes. So he called me back. He goes, this is not a standard procedure, but please know we at the Lee County Sheriff's Department are sorry to tell you that your son has been killed. I don't even know if those were the right words or whatever, because I was in total shock. And then 5 minutes later, the local town cops show up to tell us, and I didn't even talk to them because I was so furious. So I told, I said, well, we're 12 hours away. We'll be home tomorrow. And he said, okay. Well, we didn't stay. We just got in the car and drove right back. Met with the detectives the next day. They took our statements and told us as little as they possibly could. And, I can visualize the conversation, almost to the point down to what clothes I was wearing and everything. It was a very long night. It's been a long 5 years. I did initially ask them if it was self-inflicted because of his mental state, wondering if the drugs had just got to him. He didn't want to live like this anymore. You see this on TV, this is the only way I'm going to be free. That went through my head. Did he just kill himself because he figured that was the only way out of it? And they told me no. And then I asked, well, was his body dumped there? Or was he killed there? And that's when they told me they couldn't tell me that information right then and there because of the rain and everything. It was very muddy and rainy when they found his body, I guess.
Do they know how long he had been there before he was found?
They say they don't have an exact time. I've actually looked up because of apparently the news press, or was it NBC2, used the exact words that was on the incident report about the buzzards flying around. And so I looked up, how long does the body lay there before a buzzard starts flying around? This is where my mind went a few times. And it doesn't really, it's just, it actually, if I believe it said 12, 24 hours, they can sense it or whatever. They haven't given me an exact time. I asked them if, how did you come about the date of August 15th? Because, unfortunately, that's my brother's birthday. So we always say he was killed before that because we don't, it's hard to associate the two. I've asked time and time again about, any evidence. There's nothing.
August 15, 2013, Kyle's body was found in a field near Meadow Road and Leah Court in Lehigh Acres. The cause of death was a single gunshot wound. Beyond that, there's very little information about what happened to Kyle. Police are not even sure if the field he was found in was where he was killed. On the initial incident report from Lee County Sheriff's Office, it states that foul play was not suspected and that it was not considered a crime scene. But he was found shot in a field, and there was no weapon found.
No weapon was recovered?
No. So, and the initial incident report contradicts itself in a couple places. The strangest thing about this incident report is that Lynn, Kyle's mother, was never even made aware that this report existed, and only obtained a copy after we did, and I mentioned it to her in an email. She just received a copy of this initial incident report within the last couple weeks.
Yeah, and there's some things on there that some are kind of misleading, I guess, aren't they?
They are. It states that they wasn't considered a crime scene. They didn't take any photos. They didn't do any fingerprints or anything like that.
I guess there was some claim that maybe it was raining or something.
Supposedly it was raining and it was very muddy, and they really just couldn't, I guess, get any evidence.
But we know it's a gunshot wound, but there's no weapon. And I think on the incident report it lists a felony, so obviously, like we talked about, it is a crime that was committed.
Yeah. So we did talk to Lynn about this incident report.
I did ask them, was this self-inflicted, and they told me no. And then I asked, was the body dumped there, or was he killed there, or whatever, and they could not answer that. They said at this point in time, we do not know. It's very hard to tell because there was not much evidence gathered at the scene.
But there was no weapon found at the scene, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, because we noticed at the top, it is marked in the incident report, they do mark felony, which means obviously that it is a crime, so it wouldn't be considered a suicide if they're calling it a felony. So is that what we're asking?
Yeah, well, I was just curious as to why they didn't consider it a crime scene, because I know that if they found a weapon, they could have assumed it was a suicide, and then they wouldn't say it's a crime scene, but it does say felony at the top of the incident report, so obviously they knew a crime was committed. So maybe they just didn't consider it a crime scene because there was nothing they could process?
That's a very good question, and I'm just going to have to, I will ask the detectives that. I mean, like I said, I just got this report, didn't even know it was available. No one told me about it until in speaking to you, so I am definitely going to contact the detective I have now, and I actually emailed her this afternoon in reference to that. I just wanted clarification on the foul play suspected number 24, where it says no.
Right. Yeah, that was going to be one of my questions
immediately,
for you.
That was one of my, when I first got this the other day, I questioned that myself. I said, what? So I had to look at it, and I just came to the conclusion maybe they were discussing the person that, found his body
Right.
because it's in that, that highlighted square there.
And that could be.
But I didn't even, to be totally honest, I just kept dwelling on that one area, and I don't think I caught that thing about this no crime scene or anything. So, yeah, that's a bit disturbing.
It's really strange, and it's strange that you didn't have a copy of this. I mean,
You would think that they would supply you with that.
Right.
Yes.
Part of my mind does go, okay, they came across this kid in the field. It's a drug addict.
Yeah, I'll have to agree with you, because we do see in some of the things that we see and we read research, a lot of times if the police are aware of the person and if they do a lot of drugs, they just kind of, they look at them as not, I don't want to say not human, but they look at them differently than they would just some random person. And unfortunately, that's the case. They forget that regardless of what they do drug-wise or, whether they're a criminal or not, that they are still human. And I think a lot of times they forget that.
Well, that night, I believe that's what they thought. They don't think that anymore, because I did write Sheriff Scott a letter. And I told him that body that you found in the field was my son.
Good for you.
He was loved by many, many people. And I went in depth about other things, about his, you may not have found any of his belongings, but he had a closet full of clothes. He was a very proud person of, how he looked. It was always joked about. There was never a hair out of place, and a hurricane couldn't blow his hair down because he used so much hair gel. And it just, I did get a phone call after he passed the letter on to the captain of major crimes. And he's been wonderful. He's the person that I can go to and get answers from.
So what answers do they have?
Well, when I say answers, I mean like, one time I did ask about a certain person that was arrested on drugs or whatever. And he just says, just watch the news and we can discuss this again tomorrow. They had actually done a big bust in Pine Manor. This was a couple years ago. And I just wanted to make sure that, I think I had asked him question about, has anything ever, come about? Have you checked with people in Pine Manor lately? Whatever. I think it was right after I sent out the postcards last year. I think they were kind of putting all the postcards that we had sent out, and this crime bust was all done together. And whether anybody, has said anything, obviously they didn't, or, nothing's been done. In my heart of hearts, I do believe they may know who did it, or it could be a group of people, but they just don't have the evidence for that one person that pulled the trigger. I like to speculate and think I know, because I can Facebook stalk all kinds of people.
And you're not alone.
And, I put two and two together. Okay, this is a friend of this person. This is a friend of this person. And it's just in my head, in my, it's the way my brain works anymore. And one person in particular, I really thought this person may know something. I don't know this person. His Facebook page is completely private. Nobody can get into it. I can't even get into it, except for his friends. And somebody did say something to me that somebody said, I can't believe you're gone. I just saw you last night.
Somebody wrote that on Kyle's Facebook page before or right after.
No, it was after. Yeah.
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 Huh.
And the police are obviously aware of this?
Yes.
Well, the police should be able to subpoena the
And
Facebook page.
it's been, I think they saw that. So they were able to see that. They know the person, but I've also been told by I think it was the third detective that I had, that this person was not going to make or break the case.
So maybe they had already looked into it, you think?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I know they have.
Okay.
Because I was obsessed about that. You know, I don't understand it. I just don't understand. I've had so many people says, this seems to be a simple murder. I don't know what they mean by that, but I had a friend, not a friend, but one of Kyle's friends. She's in criminology and everything. And she goes, I don't get it. She goes, why can't they find anything? And that's where I think it's because he was a drug addict. They let things slide through in the beginning. And until they realized, and this is off, well, it doesn't matter. I don't care. I think they know how I feel sometimes.
Okay.
But I get frustrated at times because I don't get any answers, but then I understand either there might not be any answers or there are answers and they just can't say anything.
Yeah, I do know that a lot of times the police will keep a lot close to the vest, not even telling the family because, say they do have a suspect and they bring them in, they're going to have information that only the killer would know.
Oh, exactly, yeah.
So, and I'm sure you know this, but I'm kind of for our listeners. That's what maybe why they're not telling you everything that they know, if they know more than they say they do.
Yeah, and they, at one point in time, they did say that they had, and they never ever give me any names, but they had heard that someone they had spoken to in the very beginning had gotten sober and thought maybe, they'd get in touch with him. He had moved out of town. He or she, to be totally honest, I'm really not quite sure. They had moved out of town, and they were hoping, because they had gotten sober, and they wanted to talk to that person. Well, they tried to get in touch with them, and they said that they've fallen off the face of the earth, so they don't know if they've gotten back into drugs or what. But so my thing is, yes, it happened here, but people who are on drugs could be anywhere. They could leave this town and go somewhere else.
Yeah.
You just never know where somebody might know Kyle.
So
why hasn't anyone come forward? Do you think that there's an unwritten rule in that area? Keep your mouth shut. Yeah, that's what I was.
after the research on Kyle and talking with Lynn, his mother, there's one thing we know for sure. Kyle was a great person who just made some bad choices and ultimately lost his life.
Well, there's days I don't want to say numb, but I just go through the motions of doing everything I have to do to get through the day. I work full time. I, come home, cook dinner for the two of us, and we live in our little home and go on each day. Then there are times, especially when I'm driving. My husband and I drive together to work. He drops me off in Bonita, and then he goes on into Naples. And there are days we drive separately. Those days when it's separate, I will sometimes crank up the radio a little too loud, listening to music that Kyle would listen to.
Now, I saw in an interview that you have his iPod.
I do. I don't listen with... It's not working properly anymore. It was for a while, but it was a very old iPod. But I still do have it. I don't have much of his stuff. I have that, his trophies, his letter jacket, his graduation gown and cap, and pictures.
So, what are your plans, if any, to carry on and keep this case in the spotlight and help or keep it out there so hopefully someone comes forward? I mean, is there another flyers going to go out, the billboards, anything?
There aren't any plans as of right now. What I do on a personal level is on Facebook, I do the boost of either the picture of the flyer, one of our news stories, or the billboard. The one with the billboard, I think, really has drawn in more. I've reached, if I remember correctly, the last total number that I reached was over 16,000 people. And, I figure I can afford $40-50 a month if it finds an answer. So that's what I do on a, personal level. Of course, I would like to be able to do the postcards all the time. They've also, I do know, you've heard about the playing cards that they hand out to the jails?
Yes.
I know they just did some several months ago, and Kyle's picture is on the back of a card somewhere.
That's good.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's one of the things. I don't know if you said you listened to the Felipe Santos and Terrence Williams. I'm sorry. They did the playing cards as well, and they actually got several leads.
For Felipe Santos. On one of those cards.
Yeah, where they people had recognized him in anything. I mean, so you're just trying to get somebody to recognize, and I think that's really a good thing because, when people hear names, that's great. But me, I'm a facial guy. I have great facial recognition, but I'm bad with names. So I think that's really a good thing.
Yeah.
That's excellent.
So I usually try to do something at his birthday, and also on the anniversary of his death. Those are my two major pushes. Of course, if Crime Stoppers wanted to do a story every week, that'd be fine with me. But sadly, there's too much else going on in this town.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I've actually said at one point in time, this has got to stop because my file keeps getting piled on top of, more files are getting piled on top of Kyle's file, and it's going to get lost. They say it's not, but the newer, fresher cases.
Well, and that's why it's great for you to mention that and do things, and that's one of the things that we like to do is, if it somehow gets out there a little bit and it gets heard, that brings that file back to the top again, and then it gets a chance to maybe be revisited a little bit.
You may not have known, whoever may not have known Kyle like his friends and his family did, but you took away a light. People always, they always ask, what do I miss the most about him? And I always said his smile. But I started thinking about that just a few weeks ago. And it was like, no, I just miss everything about him. The way he would smack his food when he ate. He could be sitting watching TV and just burst out laughing. And I'd laugh thinking of him. He got me to watch the stupid Christmas movie. I just had to watch it because it was hysterical. And that was when Elf first came out. And so now, the first year I couldn't watch it, but now I watch it and I laugh and I cry because he got me to watch that movie. And to hear him laugh when he was watching that, he worked with my brother-in-law. I want to tell this one story because it's really funny. My brother-in-law worked for a company that traveled all over, and he would go out and scope venues for speaking engagements. And he would take a crew along with him. And sometimes Kyle went with him to help set up chairs or do whatever. They were in a hotel, and my nieces were with him, and they were going up the elevator, and he just looked at him, and he just hit all the buttons, just like Buddy the Elf did in the movie, and they just started cracking up. And he actually mentioned, something about Buddy, but every time I see that episode, I think of him being in an elevator, and I wasn't even there, but they tell me that story, and we always start laughing and cracking up. But just, sometimes I think, he's just going to walk through that door, and this was just all a dream, but I don't think it is. I'm awake. I do feel the pain. I still see a white Camaro sometimes, and I think, oh, is that his old car? I see somebody walking down the street in a pair of cargo shorts, like he always wore those beige cargo shorts. Flip-flops and a t-shirt. Could that be him? Were they wrong? And 5 years is just too long to not know anything.
Yeah, I agree. And that
Even though I know there's other people out there that have, it's been longer than that. And I'm sorry. I really, my heart breaks for them too. It's just not fair.
Wow. So, those are some pretty powerful words. And like I said at the beginning of this episode, this isn't entertainment. This is a mother who's lost her only son. Again, Kyle Alexander Byrtus was 25 years old when he was found in a field in Lehigh Acres, Florida. He was known to frequent the Pine Manor community in Fort Myers. Anyone with information on Kyle's death is urged to contact the Lee County Sheriff's Office at 239-477-1000 or Southwest Florida Crime Stoppers at 1-800-780-TIPS. That's 1-800-780-8477.
There's a $5,000 reward for information leading to the arrest and conviction of Kyle's killer, or I guess anyone related to this case.
Killer or killers.
Yeah. And if you're one of those people who, obviously, in this situation or being in Pine Manor, as we spoke about the crime earlier, if you're scared of the sheriff's office, call Crime Stoppers. You can remain anonymous. You don't have to be known.
Right.
So
you can donate to Kyle's GoFundMe page, which is still raising money for a reward. It's up to $5,000 right now, but it can go even higher. So
it also helps some avenues of Len keeping his case fresh, to sort of get the name out there and keep it from, going to the wayside, just in an effort to get justice for Kyle.
Yeah, and what's the website for the GoFundMe?
It's gofundme.com/Kyle Byrtus. That's KYLEBYRTUS.
Okay. So, like we said,
it's a story of a good kid who just made some bad choices.
Right. And a senseless murder.
Yeah,
probably over drugs.
Or something just even more petty than that. You never know. But anything you can help with, or if you know something, let someone know.
If you know something, say something.
That's our motto here.
Yep.
Let's say it again.
If you know something, say something. And that brings us to the conclusion of Kyle Byrtus. And a big thank you to Lynn for talking with us.
Please check out our social media. We're going to post some letters
and pictures of Kyle. And I'll post a link to the GoFundMe. We're on Facebook at Paradise After Dark Podcast, Instagram at Paradise After Dark Podcast, and Twitter at Paradise Dark 239. And go ahead and give us 5 stars on Apple Podcast. That helps us get more listeners. Maybe we can get this information out to more people. And that's it.
That's it for tonight.
Thanks for listening
to Paradise After Dark.
Okay, so that's the episode there, and Lauren promised us some updates. What are those updates you're talking about? I know you checked into this. The one thing about this particular case is it's the one case that I know of that Lauren checks on quite often.
Well, like I said in the beginning, I'm in contact with Lynn, Kyle's mother. We've been in contact.
That's what I mean.
Over all these years.
You check it periodically for updates, even like web searches and things.
So in November of last year, November of 2021, Lynn sends me a message, and she is just beside herself. She got a call from a sergeant at the evidence facility at the Lee County Sheriff's Office asking if she had reported a gun stolen in 2013. And she said yes. And the sergeant proceeded to ask, well, if you still want it, it's been sitting here in evidence since 2015. So Lynn is horrified. She proceeds to tell this sergeant about Kyle's murder and that they had reported that the gun was stolen and that Kyle was most likely the one who stole the gun. The sergeant asked if Lynn knew the name of the detective and she would contact them. So Lynn called and left phone messages for the detective on Kyle's case and her superior with no response. She then emailed them and the head of major crimes, no response. But she was able to meet with the detectives assigned to Kyle's case in early December of last year, 2021, but didn't get as much info as she had hoped for, although they did go out to the site, the crime scene, with the crime scene photos, and they've talked to a forensic specialist. They did tell her that they feel like Kyle was taken out there and killed. And that's a detail that she had never gotten a straight answer on before. So they feel like somebody took him out there for the purpose of taking his life.
So they feel like they took him out there and that's the place where he was murdered, where he was found. It wasn't, they took him out there afterwards.
It wasn't a dump.
Yeah. That just confirms it.
And they're going through all of the lab tests that they've already gone through, and they're sending things off for more testing since 2013. It's been almost 10 years. The technology has vastly improved. So in March of this year, so literally last month, they got the lab results back from the gun that sat on the shelf for 6 years at the Lee County Sheriff's Office evidence facility, and it's not a match for the fragments of the bullets that were found at the scene. So unfortunately, that was not the gun that was used. But they called in the state attorney's office cold case unit to help with the investigation, which is really huge.
That's
huge. Great. I mean,
that's magnificent news.
Yes. And since we covered Kyle's case, now we were the first podcast to ever talk to Lynn, to ever actually cover Kyle's case. It was a very unknown case. I mean, it was known in our area because this originated where we live in our area, but it was not national news.
It was brought to our attention by a listener, I believe.
It was.
Yeah.
It was. But since our episode, Lynn has spoken to, and Kyle has been featured on an episode of Murder in My Family with our friend Mike Morford.
I like Mike. He's a good guy.
The Rigor Mortis podcast. And it was also the case of the week on James Renner's Philosophy of Crime podcast. So that's a lot of exposure.
Absolutely.
So Kyle's also been featured on the Project Cold Case website. And his case is also on the FDLE website, that's the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, under Unsolved Homicides. And there's a link there where you can submit tips. So anyone listening, especially in the Southwest Florida area, if you know something, say something. This is a mother, and now here we are 4 years later, and I just was praying that this would be solved, and I would love to give an update and say that this was solved, but it's still not solved. And somebody in that area knows something.
Yeah, that's usually always the case when you get down to the brass tacks, so to speak. And remember that one tip is what sometimes just blows these cases wide open. It's that
Exactly.
one little tip. Hey, I remember seeing this, or hey, I saw that. And if you remember the Gabby Petito case, that people that saw the truck they were in, the little Ford Transit van they were in, the
Right.
RV, they were videoing it, and that literally blew things wide open, and they were able to find her. So just, like I tell people, when you hear these things, names, scenes, just flash through your brain. Where was I at this time? Where was I? If I was in that area, did I see something? Did I talk to somebody who saw something? And
Do I
again,
know someone who might know something or
Exactly.
have seen something? So there's our case. There's our throwback. Kyle Byrtus, still unsolved. If you have any information, you can contact the Lee County Sheriff's Office at area code 239-477-1000. That's 239-477-1000. Or you can call Southwest Florida Crime Stoppers at 1-800-780-TIPS. That's 1-800-780-TIPS. And you can remain completely anonymous. And as we have said and done in the past, if you are uncomfortable contacting authorities or Crime Stoppers, you can contact us and we will pass the information on. Send us an anonymous email. We'll send the information on. Anything we can do to bring justice to any case that we cover.
that's going to be it for tonight, everyone. Thank you very much for listening.
To Paradise After Dark.
Dark, 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 dark.